The wood shader. By far the most basic and used shader in the archivist industry. Getting it right can really make the difference between a good and a bad render. If we take for example this scene, the artist's priority was probably getting the shader right, otherwise this would have been a really flat render. Truth is, creating a wood shader isn't that hard, and you will quickly get the hang of it once you start creating a few of your own. So, you probably guessed it, today's topic is going to be about creating a wood shader. Yay! Good day everyone, my name is Sam, I'm gonna be today's host. Today I'm gonna show you 3 ways you can create a wooden floor using the Corona renderer. First method is gonna be the anisotropy way. This one is by far the easiest, mainly because it uses only one texture and it takes about 2 minutes to set up. The main difference with this technique is that it uses the anisotropy channel to map the glossiness. Now some of you might be familiar with this, but mainly the anisotropy channel is used for metal material like cooking pot for example, but in our case we are going to use it to map the glossiness. Second one's gonna be the all-out texture ways. Now this one uses 4 to 5 textures to map different information. So it uses the diffuse, the gloss, the normal and the reflection map. You get overall more control over the fine details, so you can really fine-tune the shader to get the look that you really want to. The downside to that is that it requires either a software or a subscription to create those textures. Now some of you might already know or might want to create them on your own, and this is totally fine. In my opinion, I just think this is really time consuming, and I'd rather spend 10 to 15 bucks a month in order to get them all set up for me, and I'm getting really high quality resolution. So yeah. The third one's gonna be the realistic way. Now this one creates material with no visible seam or repetition. In my opinion it gives the best result. The slide that you saw earlier was made using that way. The downside to that is that it requires a $20 plugin, but in our case we can use the free version, which is totally fine for what we are going to do, because the free version allows you to create the standard pattern. So this is actually the one we are going to use, so it's not really a downside, but for some of you this might be. Other than that, I actually recommend buying it. This is an awesome plugin that allows you to create I think 6 or 5 patterns, and I just think this is $20 well spent. It uses only 1 to 2 textures. What you will need for this, everything is gonna be in the description. The first thing is gonna be the floor generator plugin, which can be found on this link right there. Like I said, this is free for the standard floor. You only need to sign in. You will need a texture that you would like to use for this tutorial. Unfortunately, I can't give you the exact one I'm gonna use because I paid for that, and I can't give a paid texture for free. This is not legal, unfortunately. Other than that, you can take a look around. Those 2 websites are subscription based. There you go. You get texture when you pay for that. I'm using Polygon, which some of you might already know. This is really high quality texture, all tileable, well, most of them, and yeah, I really like that website. It's really awesome. If you just want to create them on your own, with a, let's say just a diffuse, you have a diffuse map of a wooden floor and you want to create the normal and all the other map, well, you can use Crazy Bump, which is a software made for that, and that's pretty much it. And let's get started. So I've already go ahead and create a nice little room for our wood shader. I didn't think about recording this because I'm assuming you have a basic knowledge of 3ds Max. There's really nothing fancy going on. We're not even gonna point the camera at the actual room. This is just to get better shadow and more accurate results. The only thing worth mentioning is we are going to use Portal for the window hole right there. What portals are, this is basically just a material that tells the software where the windows are, because even though you know those looks like window, the software doesn't know that, and by doing so you're going to have a faster render with way less noise. So that's pretty much it. And this is not a physical camera, that's worth mentioning too. This is the, how's it called? This is the standard camera, and I'm not even sure if I'm gonna use the Corona camera mode, which I'll explain if I used it. So yeah, there's really nothing fancy going on here, just basic stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and do the lighting though, so we are on the same page. I thought about using a sun plus a fill color for that, so that way everyone can follow me along that, but I found free HDRI that works really well with those. I'm gonna link this in the description. Yeah, I already got it there, but I'm gonna go ahead and just re-import it. So those HDRI are from Viz Park, I think. No, Viz People. Yeah, so they create this pack right there, which is really high quality actually. This is 6000 by 2900, and this is from the evening to the noon, I think. Yeah. Anyway, I really like those HDRI, and as I said, I'm gonna link it in the description. Suggest you use them as well. You'll get better reflection on the floor material. And yeah, I've applied a UW map on the plane that I'm gonna be using as the floor. Nothing fancy there either. I've set the tiling to be 4x4, and I've unchecked the real map size. And is there anything else to mention? I don't think so. We can go ahead and create our first material, which is gonna be T1 that uses the Anisotropy method, which is really easy, nothing real fancy. Wood Anisotropy. Yeah, that's how you say it. Go ahead and grab the texture that you want to use. I'm gonna link mine in this description. This is basically just a typical wood floor. Plug it, assign it, and be sure to check that box right there. So it's already mapped correctly because I already did it before the actual thing. And yeah, we can go ahead and enable our interactive rendering. Now, just because I don't want to go through the hassle of always going back from a window to another window, I'm gonna lock the interactive rendering to the actual camera, which is this one right there. In order to do that, just press F10, which is gonna bring the render panel. Just go right there and click that little lock right there. It's gonna do exactly what we want it to be. And now I want to adjust the HDRI sun to cast a light into our room, because right now I think it's facing backwards. So in order to do that, you just go into the viewport configuration, background, use environment background. There you go. As we can see, the sun is not lined up with the window over there, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring the material editor, go into the scene materials, grab our environment map right there. Now I already know what the value here are. It's 0.8 for me. It may be different for you, but for me it's fine. And I'm gonna lower that. I think it's by 3. Yeah, I think it fits perfectly. Okay, and I'm gonna crank the exposure level by going into the output of our HDRI. I'm really struggling to say that word. It's not even a word, it's just 4 letters. I'm gonna set it to 2.5. Maybe 3. Yeah, let's go crazy. So, first shader, really basic. grab the diffuse, plug it into an output node, which it's pretty much the same as using the value of the actual input here, but by doing so you don't affect the original image, which can come in handy. And when we adjust the texture value and when we adjust the actual output, we want to play with the RGB offset and the RGB level. What they does is you can see them as basically more glossy, less glossy, more contrast, less contrast. So by setting this by incrementing this value by 0.1, I'm actually decreasing the contrast. So this might be hard to understand since I'm really explaining like a feat right there, but I'm gonna show you what I mean by that in just a moment. So set that to, let's say, 1.5. Actually, I'm gonna set it to 1 to showcase what it does. So if we plug this into the reflection glossiness, nothing really happens. If we set that up just by 0.5, oh yeah, I forgot something. You need to select the material and put 1 into the level of reflection. There you go. So if we take a look at that, it's not that bad actually, but I think there's too much contrast. There's like break, you can see like different blanks in the reflection, which means there's too much contrast. So in order to lower that, you need to actually put more. You need to increment it. It's like the opposite. Now it's gonna set off the material, but you just need to adjust it back. Well, actually, I'm gonna set 0.4. This is stupid. Yeah, actually like that, it's perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. So this is pretty much done, and the little touch that makes this thing special is you just need to put in a small value into this slot right there. I usually don't go over 0.3, otherwise it's gonna look pretty unrealistic, but I like to use 0.15, which basically just means that it's gonna, well, if I just increase it to 0.1, it basically just takes the light and push it on one direction instead of this one. So if I, let's say, do this and convert it to degree, no, it's not how it works. So now it's just pushing it on one direction, which is 90 degrees. So it's supposed to be perpendicular, but going too crazy with this usually doesn't look realistic. I just like to use small value, which brings a nice little touch to the actual shader. So that's that, and we can just grab the diffuse and plug it into the bumpiness. It's gonna be too much. It's actually not that bad. I'm gonna set it to 0.3. Yeah, this is totally fine. So this is basically how you set up the Anisotropy wooden shader. It's nothing crazy, nothing, you know, revolutionary, but this is one way to do it, and I use it often, but not on the main wood shader. I like to use the turn method for the principal wood shader, but this one's really easy to do, and it pretty much takes no time to compute. So go ahead and play with it until you feel that you're comfortable with it. Let's get started on the other shader, which is going to be the one that uses for texture. Go ahead and create a new corner material, name it wood texture, and yeah, you can copy paste this texture right there simply by shift clicking it, and go ahead and bring all the other texture that you made or bought. In my case, I have the displacement, the gloss map, and I'm not gonna use the reflection. Well, yeah, I'm gonna show you why I don't use it actually. And I'm gonna import manually the normal map. Main reason is you need to override the gamma of the normal map. Otherwise, it's not gonna work, and it's not gonna work properly, and it's gonna give you a warning saying that Corona is not happy and you need to keep it happy. So yeah, go ahead and do that. And assign the material. You can check that little box right there. Doesn't really matter in our case because we already see it right there, but you know, it's a pretty box. And I'm gonna start by working on the gloss map right there. So just plug in into the reflection glossiness. Just gonna do nothing because this is set to 0. Set it back to 1. And voila. Now you get, in my opinion, you get a more accurate result than when working with this, because if you remember when we use that output node right there, it gives us a really contrasty look, like you could see the plank and the actual groove in the wood. And yeah, I think it's more accurate with a separate gloss map. Tell me what you think about it. I don't know if it's a matter of opinion or, but this is my opinion on that. And now I'll crank that up. I want to create a nice reflective shader. I want it to be really clean, so I'm gonna make it really glossy. I'm gonna actually decrease the contrast by just 0.1. I'm gonna set that back to 0.25, which I think is fine. Nah, that's too much. Let's go ahead and do 15 instead. Yeah, this is what I want. You can see tones of blue into the wood, but you can't really distinguish anything. Like you don't see an actual cloud in the reflection. So that's pretty much it for that part. I'm gonna go ahead and work on the normal map. Bump the wood. In order to make them work, you need to plug a Corona normal. Otherwise, I think, well, don't mark me on that, but I think it doesn't update when you modify it. Like you need to close this, reopen it, like if you just plug it right into that. I'm not sure, but I think this is how I use it. And yeah, so I already know that the value right here is fine. It just gives those nil details, and it's gonna show up when we render it in a higher resolution. And yeah, so basically the normal map just do the little not the scratch but the grooves on the surface. This is really a subliminal, and the height map's gonna be the one that actually creates the crease in between each plank. So let me demonstrate that. Let me just plug that in there and crank that to, let's say, 10. Now as you can see, this one really pulls up the plank and really creates something in between. I think in that case 10 may be too much. I'm gonna lower that to 8. Yeah, I think this is fine. So as you can see, with this method you can really fine-tune, like I said, you can really fine-tune the shader the way you want it to be. So let's say if I want it to have more groove, I can just pretty much, let's say an upturn value. Okay, this is maybe too much. Oh yeah, I forgot, this is not a great one. Let's try with this instead. It's gonna be way too much. Well, it's not that bad actually, but yeah, it's way too much anyway. So you can basically just fine-tune it until you really like it. And I'm not gonna show anything else about it. I'm gonna leave it to you. Explore the possibility that you can that you can have with this. Other than that, this is pretty much it. You only go back to the texture, adjust the setting, and see if this looks like a real photo or not. And I'm gonna show you actually why I don't really use, well, I don't really like the reflection map. So you put it into this, it's gonna dim out the reflection, and you basically just gotta go and bring everything up, which I don't know, you'll see, but kind of feel like it looks just like before. I don't know what it actually does other than wasting my time. So let's see, looks like that, and if I unplug this, looks exactly the same. So I don't know if anyone knows why it does this, but definitely let me know in the comment section. And rarely ever use that. Other than that, I'm more than happy with 4 texture. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the second method. So let's keep going with the third shader. Go ahead and create a new material, name it, and assign it. Now for the sake of it, I'm gonna close every view and show you how to actually use the floor generator that we just installed. Well, not in my case, but probably in yours. So in order to use it, just basically go into the modifier list, type in floor, and you have it right there. You can use it right off the bat, you don't need to do anything else. And I'm gonna go ahead and just fine-tune this until I get the look that I want. So you get a bunch of value here. They are pretty much self-explanatory, but I'm gonna go over a few. This is the length. You probably guessed it. This is the actual, length of a plank. I'm gonna go ahead and lower that to, let's say, 200. And I'm gonna lower the max width to something more like 16, which fits nicely. Now I want to change the rotation. Wait, what did I just do? Oh, and by the way, this is what you get when you pay for the actual plugin. You get a whole bunch of other stuff, but you probably don't only have the standard one, which is fine for what we want to do. So I want to change the rotation. I want the plank to be facing the other way, so I'm just going to go ahead and change the direction by 90 degrees. And what's next? Yeah, so if you want to randomize, because you can look at it and it's pretty much like everything's in row and there's no really randomization. So in order to do that, you just need to unlink the max and min value, and you just need to play with the min value, which is gonna give you some randomization. And you can even tune it further by either setting it to 0, which is which add more randomization, or set it to 1, which pretty much disable it. I like to set it to 4. Don't know why, I just like that value. And I'm gonna set the grout to 0, otherwise we are going to see through the floor, which we obviously don't want. Gonna play with the bevel, which is pretty much what you just saw. Gonna set it to something like 0.2. Yeah, the extrude is, like you probably guessed it, this is the actual height of the floor. It's fine the way it is, but I'm gonna disable it. We don't really need it. And what's next? I'm gonna play with the tilt, which pretty much like turns the floor into a more edge floor. So just add some tilt to random plank. I'll not go crazy with that. I'm gonna use, it's 0.4. Yeah, I think 0.4 is gonna be fine. And that's pretty much it. And make sure those 2 bucks right there are unchecked. They might be checked on yours. Just make sure they are unchecked. And just gonna go ahead and just apply a texture in order to unwrap this actual floor into something good. So I'll go ahead and bring the texture that I'm going to be using, which is a texture that doesn't have any visible plank in it. So if you take a look at it, this is just pretty much the groove of the wood floor. That way we don't have, a plank in the middle of a plank. So yeah, I recommend using those type of texture. Go ahead and plug that. Check that little box right there and close it. So as we can see, the unwrap didn't work out. Main reason is because it sits beneath the floor generator, so it thinks that it's still a plane, which is not. It now became a bunch of boxes and plane. So I think we can fix this just by doing that. Nah, it doesn't match. So I'll go ahead and delete that and do it manually with the unwrap UW. Gives us this. It's hard to see. Okay. So as we can see, it maps it as an entire, it maps the texture on the entire area, but we want to map it on each and every single plank. That way we can randomize the color of each one of them. So we'll go ahead and select everything. Gonna open that up. Gonna do a quick planar map. Can rotate it just like that, and I'm gonna quick peel it. Now this might be an issue, but in our case it doesn't really matter. But if you were to, let's say, really use that for an actual project, I'd suggest aligning every one of them simply by either using the text tool or doing it with this function right there. Anyway, in our case it doesn't really matter, so we're just gonna rotate it by 90 degrees so it's facing in the right direction, and we're gonna scale that up just like that. We've closed that and just do that. You can see that now each and every plank's got their own material or their own texture space. So yeah, this is what we wanted to achieve. And now we can bring back those views and just jump back into the material editor. So for that material, the only map I'm gonna use is the normal map, which is gonna be right there. Override, import, there you go. So I'm gonna work on the glossiness first. Just like with the first shader, just take that and drop it into an output node, and take the node, plug it into the reflection glossiness. Bring the reflection to 1, and it should look pretty dimmed. Yeah. So just crank that up to, let's say, 7. Let's see how it looks. Too much, way too much. 5, too much. 4. Oh, we're getting there. Gonna go and use 3 probably. This is really contrasty. Gonna try to kill some by bringing it up. But actually I think it fits our needs since we put on some tilt on the planks. It looks like an old wooden floor. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. Yeah, I like that. Plug the normal map into a Corona normal. Bumpiness, and it should be pretty intense. Not that bad. Just gonna lower it just a bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, I think it's fine like that. So the only next step left is the randomization of the color. This is pretty simple, no rocket science here. You just need to use no, not that one. A gradient ramp in combination with a Corona mix. Now I'm gonna warn you, I'm pretty sure this is a bug, like specific, but whenever I'm using those two textures in combination with the Corona renderer, it's taking a lot of time to update. So I'm gonna try to keep the update of the actual material short. So I'm gonna first wanna have a nice reddish look to that texture. So I'm gonna go ahead and enable color ramp, RGB, disable those two right there, add a new point, pick that up, bring that up, just like that. Okay, that's way too much. Let me see. 0.95 and 1 to its accurate. Yeah, I just want a nice reddish look. And basically you just need to pick that into the bottom input, take that into the top one, set that to overlay, and you can play with the mix amount. Usually I don't go any higher than 0.4, but feel free to play around and see what you like. I'm gonna go ahead and use 1.5. Now you'll see it's... no, it didn't bug. So if I plug that in, it should like freeze for a second. Yeah. Oh, it wasn't that bad actually. So you can see it just... it just randomized the actual color of each plank. I don't know why it stopped showing in the viewport. Oh, I think this is why. I think this is why it doesn't work well. I think it's because I'm showing it in the viewport. Well, you can see like now there's like different color in each plank. Now you might want to check that out, and oh, that's sad. That's really sad. Well, I'll be right back in a moment. So, I'm back, and I pretty much just figured out why it was lagging whenever I'm using these. It was because that little pretty box right there was turned on. It's still a bug, but I mean, I found the solution, and now whenever I'm updating the material without that box checked, it works just fine. So if you are having the same problem as me, there you go, there's the solution. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing I wanted to discuss was... I'm just gonna close those right there. That's gonna be hard to demonstrate. I'll need to bring that back. Pray to God that it doesn't crash. Smells the crash. Oh, it didn't. Awesome. So yeah, the only thing I wanted to discuss is you'll probably end up with a few planks that the gradient texture doesn't map well across them. And this texture is just like I showed you earlier. This is the texture you wanna flip. Like if I just take it, yeah. Just need to rotate it. But I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this. As you can see, the gradient texture doesn't map well along that plane. You can see there's like a visible seam, so you just basically need to do it by hand. It's not that big of a deal. Just grab it and move it till there's no seam. So in our case, it's gone. So you pretty much need to just keep an eye out for that, as it can kill pretty much the realism of your floor. But it's really not that big of a deal. You just do it by hand. It takes about like 4 to 5 minutes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little render, and I'll come back in a few minutes. Now here is the final render using the turn method. The only thing I did with this was cranked up the resolution a little bit, so we will be able to see those fine details better. It took me about, actually it took me 6 minutes to render, and I'm only having a 4.7% noise level, which is actually pretty decent. As you can see, you can really see like fine details in the one. This might actually be too much, but I'm gonna leave it like that, doesn't really matter. If we want to make it more interesting, we could play around with the curve and lookup table. Now with the lookup table, I like to use that one specifically, which is the Kima Allen, and I like to set that down a little bit, just like that. I just think it really, like, I don't know how to describe it, it just brings life to your image, I guess. And we are going to play with the curves. Gonna do the classic red and green high with the blue high. I don't know how you call that, but many people do that, so we'll do like many people do. So you just bring the high red eye, eye red up. You pick the green, you do pretty much the same thing, and you grab the blue and you do the opposite. This is not right. Gonna reset it. This is way too much. This looks about fine. Yeah, this looks fine, and you can even sharpen it, but in our case this might not be useful. No, we'll leave it like that. And that's pretty much it.